Okay, so this is part 11, and let's start working on the UV unwrapping of this model. I'll bring back my reference images here. So okay. So the first thing I usually do when UV unwrapping is add a new material and give it an image texture, but create a blank image texture and change the generate type to UV grid, and this will let you see the stretching you have on your object. So we can go to UV edit and go to materials, and you can see the image is this, so it should be mapped to this. And now let's start UV unwrapping. We can isolate this first. So where can we add seams? We can start by adding a seam right there. Control E, max seam, and we can unwrap to see how that looks. I see there is not a lot of stretching right now, but I think we can still minimize the stretching that is there. Maybe we can remove this, separate this bolt, Control E, max seam, and this top part here, because you can see there's a lot of stretching going on here. So if we isolate this max seam into an island, and see that should reduce the tension that we see there. And also I think we can, let me first remove these blue lines that indicate the bevel weights, and we can go under overlays and turn off those around there. So let's see. So there shouldn't be any stretching on this, or it should be minimum. And but at the top here, we need to mark a few seams to reduce the tension. So if we add a seam there and another seam right about there, unwrap, and see we have that. And now I think we can apply the mirror modifier and unwrap again. At now, because we have applied the mirror modifier, we need to remove a few things. So there is no stretching at the bottom. I will still need to add a few seams here. Also maybe add a seam right around here. Control E, max seam, and one that goes up to down here. Max seam, unwrap. Unwrap. See, there is also stretching here, so we can also create a seam here to reduce that tension there. I think it didn't go all the way, so let's examine this and see. We can just look at that from here. Control E, max seam, unwrap. Interesting. Maybe it's not on this side here. Control E maxim, unwrap. Let me see what our vertex is this. Are there any double? Let me see if there are doubles here. Remove doubles, but we need to reduce this threshold. Point. It's not causing a lot of issues, so I think that's should be okay. Plus, it's going to be one single color for that. And yes, so we are done for this side. Let's do this for this. For this, let's also use the same material. We unwrap. We can add a seam just behind the handle here to hide it. Mark seam. And also add a seam about there. Unwrap. That would minimize the stretching. I can also unwrap this as well. Give it the same material. We also need to unwrap this seat. Give it the same material. Come to this. Can clear the rotation. Clear rotation. Out. Rotate -90. Okay, let me undo this. Should be -90 or 90. Yeah, perfect. Give it the same material. Let's isolate it and start. You can start by adding a seam right around here. That goes all the way to the back here. Control E, mark seam. And things that are going inside like this should be separated to minimize stretching. So things like this should be separated. Also this here should be separated. This extrusion as well, because they cause a lot of stretching. Control E, maxing. And this ring here, since it's going to have a separate material, we can also just separate it in the UVs. Control E, maxing. Let's make sure it's going all the way. Control E, max save. And now if we unwrap, see we have reduced some of the stretching. Now we can come to this one here. It's still using the default UV, so we can just unwrap it like this. Maybe hide the seam on the inside like that. We don't need it here. We don't need the seam there. Control E, max seam. And we don't need the seam this side. So Control E, clear seam. So unwrap. Let me turn on simplify because it's a bit slow right now. I also think this object still has a lot of stretching, so let's see how to minimize that. Let me first identify which one is it. There's this here. I think we can add a seam there. Control E, max seam, unwrap. That will loosen that. So we can see we also have some issues here. This doesn't have to go all the way. Let me first isolate this. And we don't need this to be closed off. So we also we can just clear this seam, and then if we unwrap again, that's what we get. But we also need to work on this here. Shift H. It doesn't need to have those back parts. So let's see how this would look. Unhide. So what's going on? Let's see this back side here. Yeah, I think there is not a lot of stretching. And now let's apply the mirror modifier. Unwrap again. It would bring in a lot of issues with it. So let's see. We need to separate this area here. Make sure it's separate. Control E, max seam, unwrap. And this also has a lot of stretching, so we can minimize it by marking a seam there. Unwrap again. And maybe also add a seam there. Unwrap. I don't really see any more stretching anymore. So, but let's see. How is this looking? Let me see this island here. I think we can do with a seam starting from here. Should I do that? I think it's okay. We don't need that. There is not a lot of stretching, and it's also going to be hidden from the camera. So let's see, what is this area here? I think it's this behind. I think we can separate this part as well. Control E, max seam, and maybe reduce the tension around here. Unwrap. I think that's good enough. So let's work on this one here. Give it the same material. Unwrap. We can start by should we add? Yeah, we can add a loop here. Control E, max seam, and maybe separate this as well. Control E, max seam, unwrap. That is done. Go to this one here. Give it the same material. Just add a seam like that and then unwrap. I think everything has been unwrapped. These are just curves, so we don't need to unwrap those. In the next lesson, we can start working on the materials. So let's turn back the turn off simplify. That's how the object looks, and we can save this